When you play the Game of Thrones, you
Subscribe and like.
or you die. There is no middle ground.
Alright, hello guys, and welcome back to our rereading of A Game of Thrones. We are on Tyrion I, everybody's favorite POV. Maybe not, but definitely one of the best. And this one's a very short one. It's really just handling Tyrion's introduction. We see his interactions with Joffrey, one of the best in the entire book series and show, as kind of seen on the image in the background. And we also see him kind of interacting with his siblings, and we just get a little bit more into the insides of the Lannister family. Not the most major chapter in the world, which is why it's only a couple pages, but it is, again, just another kind of setup chapter for where all of our characters are going, and kind of the fallout of Bran's fall. So that will get us to the start of page 86. And again, if you guys like these rereadings, let me know down in the comments. Please subscribe, like, and comment for more of this type of content so you don't miss any. And let's get into page 86. So page 86 kind of opens with Tyrion. He's been at this library, and he's not been sleeping. He's pretty much just been up all night reading, and he's reading this book about war that's very rare. And really what this page is kind of showing is how Tyrion is as a person. He's very bookish. He really tries to keep his mind educated. And also there's this idea that one of the wolves has been howling all night, and we come to know that this is Summer, just based upon later interactions with Joffrey and then Cersei as well, that Summer is kind of constantly outside of Bran's window, and even people start to believe that the wolf is keeping Bran alive. So this whole little page is basically Tyrion getting up, stretching out, and he's going to go get some breakfast, and that's going to get us into page 87. So page 87 focuses on Tyrion's kind of descent from the library. He tells the Septon to put back his book, as it's very rare and one of the few complete collections. It's also a Valyrian scroll, so another interesting little note there. So Tyrion, again, we see that his struggles physically, as he is kind of struggling to get down some of these stairs out of the library. And we overhear the voice of the Hound. Now, the Hound is more or less saying to Joffrey, and because they're kind of having some sword play or this early in the morning, and the Hound is like, well, they should kill Bran quickly. And we know one of the things that the Hound does not like is weakness. And that's kind of one of the key points here, and it's brought up multiple times throughout this chapter on the idea of, well, should Bran live or die? Should Ned give Bran, I guess, some mercy? And we even see how Joffrey is kind of agreeing with this, but he's like, well, at least he's dying quietly, whereas the wolf is noisy and keeping me up. And the Hound kind of snarks back, and he's like, well, I could kill the wolf for you. Now, there's some people that, again, kind of bring this up as maybe evidence that the Hound got someone maybe to kill Bran, because Joffrey then responds with, well, the Starks wouldn't miss one wolf. And this is where Tyrion kind of kicks in, and Tyrion's very witty in this page. Tyrion is kind of like, I think they can count to 6. Unlike you, Joffrey. He doesn't say it exactly like that. He says it some princes can't. And it just shows Tyrion's intellect, how he's able to always bounce back and be basically able to verbally spar with anyone. And he's just walking miles around Joffrey in this moment. And then Tyrion kind of just starts getting made fun of because of his height. The Hound's basically like, did you hear that? Was that the wind? It's just and Tyrion, this tells us a lot about Tyrion, because Tyrion kind of just takes us on the chin. It's like what we saw in the last chapter, or not the last chapter, but the chapter with Jon, where he's like, you are who you are. Just kind of wear it, right? Tyrion's pretty much like that. He's just like, okay, heard it a million times, doesn't really affect me. And he's like, down here, lad. And that'll kind of get us into page 88. Again, it might seem like I'm kind of speeding through this, but the thing is, with this chapter, there's not a ton really to discuss. Just realistically, it's just kind of some verbal spars here and there, and it's an overall good chapter, but again, there's just not a lot to talk about. It is a very interesting chapter, but there's not a ton there. So let's get to page 88. Now, page 88 is basically talking about the exact scene that is on the screen right now in the background, is the idea that Tyrion's like Joffrey. You need to pay your respects to Catelyn and Ned and basically offer your condolences and your sympathies. And Joffrey is just kind of like, why would I do that? Brandon is nothing to me. I don't care. And Tyrion's like, well, it's expected of you, right? You know, this is just, it doesn't matter if you have nothing to offer, right? If you can't help them, which you can't, and say you don't even care about Bran, it's expected of you. It's to build up this persona that you're a good guy, is more or less. It's a show of faith more than anything. And Joffrey just doesn't understand that. And he basically is like, I hate the wailing of women, and Tyrion slaps him. This scene, by the way, they captured it perfectly in the show. It's literally word for word the exact same thing. And again, Joffrey's crying for his mother, and Tyrion smacks him again. And you know, and then Tyrion basically just goes off on him saying, okay, you're gonna get on your knees, and you're gonna give all your condolences to Ned and Kat, and you're gonna do all this stuff. And Joffrey runs away. And it's one of the things that we do see with Tyrion is that Tyrion does put people down, like, in their place. Like, he's not afraid to bully people because of how he's been treated. And the Hound kind of perfectly comes in with this line that is such a huge foreshadowing moment to Tyrion and Joffrey's relationship. Because right now, Tyrion holds the entire power dynamic, right? Tyrion is this person right now that is older. Joffrey is not, like, king or anything. Tyrion is able to flex this power over Joffrey, and we're going to see that kind of that dynamic shift a little when Joffrey starts getting into his full power. But it is interesting the way the Hound says, you know, he will remember that. And it's something we see come up with Book 3, Book 2, and how Joffrey specifically targets Tyrion out at times, because this does seem like a regular occurrence. And it's another thing that I noted is that Joffrey doesn't seem like he's disciplined or is talked back to by anyone outside of Tyrion. Tyrion's really the only person that tells Joffrey kind of what to do or what he's doing wrong. And it's kind of why, in my opinion, Joffrey does come out as bad as he does outside of things like the incest. To finish up, we have Tyrion basically asking where Jaime is. And the Hound says, with the Queen. So Tyrion, heading into page 89, he'll be kind of heading over to eat with his family, and they'll be discussing Bran's fall and his current condition. Also, I want to say in advance, sorry for these pictures being a little blurry. I couldn't really find a lot of good pictures for this chapter that were like, you know, really good detailed pictures. So I did the best I could with these, so you guys kind of get the point. But Tyrion arrives with his family, or not with them, but he joins them eating breakfast. And what I think here is very interesting is the way that we see how great of friends Robert and Ned are, where Tyrion kind of walks in and he's like, is Robert still abed? And Cersei's like, he never came to bed. He's been with Ned, watching over Bran the whole time. It really shows that these two really do care a lot about each other, even when it comes to their children. And I think that was a really amazing sentiment that we see from Robert to do that Robert hasn't even slept at all this entire night. And another thing that we can see right away is how Tyrion views Cersei and how he views Jaime, where Cersei kind of looks at Tyrion with this disdain that she doesn't like him. She looks down on Tyrion, where as Tyrion and Jaime's relationship is much more loving and brotherly, where Tyrion knows that Jaime takes nothing seriously, but he still loves him all the same because Jaime is the only person that's kind of treated him like a normal person. And it's very similar, and I want to parallel this to Arya's chapter, where Arya kind of feels like Jon is that person for her. This is kind of how it is with Tyrion. And we really see throughout this chapter how Tyrion experiences being shorter. He's bullied constantly. People are constantly talking down on him, literally. And it's nice to see that Tyrion does have at least someone like Jaime, even though we do know their relationship is not the most healthy, as we'll find out in Book 3. And Tyrion kind of orders his breakfast, and he notes in this moment how similar Jaime and Cersei really are. Like, they are twins, they look very much alike. And it is interesting the way that the two could, like, switch places when they were younger. Like, you couldn't tell them apart, which I think is really interesting on that idea. And I think it goes even more into why Cersei likes Jaime, is because Jaime looks exactly like her. So it's, it's basically like being in a relationship with yourself. That's kind of how I view it. Now, this kind of leads us to this whole idea of Tommen asks, what is Bran's condition? Do you have an update? And Tyrion says there's been no change, but that's actually a good thing. That is positive, that maybe he will get better. Now, Tyrion also notes in this moment that Tommen is much different than Joffrey, that Tommen is much more of a sweeter kid, he's a nice kid, and we really see that very stark difference between the two, especially when you look at their rulerships when Joffrey comes to throne, whereas when Tommen does. And you really do see how different those two characters are. And it's interesting the way Tyrion, when we get into the next page, like at the very beginning, he talks about how it's kind of common, right? Like Tyrion is very different than Jaime. I think that's a normal thing where siblings try to be vastly different than the other because they don't want to constantly be compared to the other. And I think that's just something that's common that George subtly threw into this page. And like I said, that will get into page 90. So page 90, again, will be really focusing on exactly what is Bran's condition and what is going on. And Jaime kind of references that Brandon is kind of an unlucky name. And Tyrion kind of refutes this because Jaime here is talking about Brandon Stark, Ned's brother, who was one of the people that dies at King's Landing to the Mad King. And Tyrion goes, I don't know. I mean, it seems like Bran may actually recover. Now, Tyrion is doing this to test them. He's testing what is going to happen after he says this. Because right when he says this, he's not paying attention to Tom and Myrcella. He's looking directly at Jaime and Cersei. Because they exchange this glance. It's very subtle. It's very quick. But Tyrion picks up on it and instantly knows that that's really not what they wanted. Like, there's some little connection there that I think Tyrion picks up on very quickly and understands that they were in some way involved in what happened to Bran. And the rest of this page talks about how Bran will never walk, he's crippled, he broke his back more or less, and that the gods are cruel for keeping this condition on him. Cersei's like, the gods are cruel, maybe they should just kill him. Again, same sentiment as kind of like Joffrey and the Hound had earlier on. And there's also this interesting note, is that Summer has been basically outside of Bran's window all the time. And whenever they chase away Summer, Bran seems to worsen. So again, we see this idea that the Wolves and the Starks are connected in one way or another. And this, again, builds upon that idea. And it goes even further when Cersei's like, those wolves are dangerous. We do not need them going south. Again, more foreshadowing to what we're going to see happen with Lady and also Nymeria in that event, and that Cersei does eventually get her way, and that in the back of her mind, she always wanted these direwolves to either be killed or not to come here. So it factors into, I think, why she tries to kill Lady later on in the story. And that'll bring us to page 91. So page 91, Tyrion then asks, when are they leaving? Like, so when are you guys just getting out of here? Basically it's what he says. And they really have no answer here. Like, they were already supposed to have left, but because of Bran's condition, Robert's kind of holding back. And Cersei kind of turns it on Tyrion, like, where are you going to go? And Tyrion decides, very interestingly, to go to the Wall. We also learn that Jon and Benjen will be accompanying Jon and Benjen. So, again, it shows that Tyrion is very, very different from other characters like Cersei and Jaime, who don't really care about the Wall. They don't really have any interest in seeing other parts of the world, especially when you're in the cold north. It shows how Tyrion is much different, and he wants to take in as much knowledge as he can and live life to its fullest. So I really think that is another reason why Tyrion is a fan favorite, especially early on in the series. And Tyrion says some sly remarks like, Tyrion would never like go celibate and all that stuff. And Cersei's basically like, okay, the children, they don't need to hear this. We're leaving. So now it's just Jaime and Tyrion. And this is going to bring us to the last part of the chapter. But Jaime kind of argues that Ned should give him a clean death. It's not worth it. Like, Bran is a cripple. He's going to be kind of an outcast in society. He's never going to be able to walk. He's not going to be able to do any of these things. And even when you look at Bran himself, where he wanted to be a knight, he's never going to be able to do that. it's interesting. It's an interesting argument as to what Jaime kind of proposes, because we see that Jaime would never want to live as a cripple. He would rather die. And that's very interesting when we come to later on in the story when Jaime gets his hand cut off. Because Jaime, when he loses his hand at the beginning, this is kind of his sentiment. He doesn't care if he lives or dies, and he needs Brienne to kind of pull him out of that. And I think this is another really great foreshadowing that we see in some of these early chapters, that Jaime has this persona, but that's going to be completely flipped on its head, and Jaime's going to have to live like that. Jaime's this golden boy. He's had everything handed to him. He's the favorite child, and things are going to get a little rough for him as the series goes on. Now, Tyrion obviously thinks different. Tyrion has been an outcast of society his entire life, and he wants Bran to live. And also, because he wants to kind of mess with Jaime a little bit, and also just to see what Jaime's reaction to this response is, he basically says, you know, I'd like to see him live. I would love to see what he has to say. And this kind of switches up Jaime's mood entirely as we get into page 92. And this page kind of focuses again, it's only a couple of sentences, it's actually very short, but we get this idea that, okay, Tyrion, whose side are you on? Like, what are you hinting at here? And again, it's very interesting foreshadowing, because Tyrion says he loves his family and all that, and that he's wounded, that Jaime even thinks that, but it is huge foreshadowing to showing that the Lannister family kind of shits on Tyrion his entire life, and will continue to do even further, betraying him, treating him like dirt, and even Jaime, who is this person that is kind of the closest to Tyrion, is also going to lie and betray Tyrion. And how Tyrion will be, by the time he's in Dance, completely against his family, wanting all of his family to die, killing his father, being the alleged killer of Joffrey. There is a bunch of huge foreshadowing to future chapters and future plot points in the story in this chapter, which is something that makes this chapter very interesting. The problem with this chapter, it's extremely short. As you guys noticed, this chapter is about 6 pages long. It's the shortest chapter of the entire series up to this point. Now, it is refreshing that we get a Tyrion chapter right after Bran, because every page we got on here was pretty good. It's just a lot of conversation and kind of just going into Tyrion's character, who he is as a person. So again, another shorter kind of reread, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm not sure what chapter we have next after this one. I might be Jon. I think it's probably Jon, but I hope you guys all enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys all in next week's reread, or we'll be having Daemon Targaryen's analysis video tomorrow, and some more videos up later this week. So thank you guys all for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.